Good morning, everyone. Today we will be starting in Mark chapter 5. Jesus and his disciples arrived on the other side of Lake Galilee, the territory of Gerasa. As soon as Jesus got out of the boat, he was met by a man who came out of the burial caves there. This man had an evil spirit in him and lived among the tombs. Nobody could keep him tied with chains anymore. Many times his feet and his hands had been tied, but every time he broke the chains and smashed the irons on his feet. He was too strong for anyone to control him. Day and night he wandered among the tombs and through the hills, screaming and cutting himself with stones. He was some distance away when he saw Jesus, so he ran, fell on his knees before him, and screamed in a loud voice, "Jesus, Son of the Most High God, what do you want from me? For God's sake, I beg you, don't punish me." He said this because Jesus was saying, "Evil spirit, come out of this man." So Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" The man answered, "My name is Mob. There are many of us." I also think in other versions that line goes, "We are legion, for we are many." My name is Legion, for we are many. And he kept begging Jesus not to send the evil spirits out of that region. There was a large herd of pigs nearby, feeding on a hillside. So the spirits begged Jesus, "Send us to the pigs, and let us go into them." And he let them go. And the evil spirits went out of the man and entered the pigs. The whole herd, about 2,000 pigs in all, rushed down the side of a cliff into the lake and was drowned. The men who had been taking care of the pigs ran away and spread the news in the town among the farms. People went out to see what had happened, and when they came to Jesus, they saw a man who used to have the mob of demons in him. He was sitting there, clothed and in his right mind, and they were all afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the man with the demons and about the pigs. So they asked Jesus to leave their territory. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had the demons begged him, "Let me go with you." But Jesus would not let him. Instead, he told him, "Go back home to your family and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how kind he has been to you." So the man left and went all through the 10 towns, telling what Jesus had done for him, and all who heard it were amazed. Jesus went back across the other side of the lake. There, at a lakeside, a large crowd gathered around him. Jairus, 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 an official of the local synagogue, arrived, and when he saw Jesus, he threw himself down at his feet and begged him earnestly, "My little daughter is very sick. Please come and place your hands on her so that she will get well and live." Then Jesus started off with him. So many people were going along with Jesus that they were crowding him from every side. There was a woman who had suffered terribly from severe bleeding for 12 years. Even though she had been treated by many doctors, she had spent all her money, but instead of getting better, she got worse all the time. She had heard about Jesus, so she came in the crowd behind him, saying to herself, "If I just touch his clothes, I will get well." She touched his cloak, and her bleeding stopped at once, and she had the feeling inside her that she was healed of her trouble. At once Jesus knew that power had gone out of him. So he turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" His disciple answered, "You see how the people are crowding you? Why do you ask who touched you?" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. The woman realized what had happened to her, so she came trembling with fear, knelt at his feet, and told him the whole truth. Jesus said to her, "My daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your trouble." While Jesus was saying this, some messengers came from Jairus' house, and told him, "Your daughter had died. Why bother the teacher any longer?" Jesus paid no attention to what they said, but told him, "Don't be afraid, only believe." Then he did not let anyone else go on with him except Peter and James and his brother John. They arrived at Jairus' house, where Jesus saw the confusion and heard all the loud crying and wailing. He went in and said to them, "Why all this confusion? Why are you crying? The child is not dead, she is only sleeping." They started making fun of him, so he put them all out, took the child's father and mother and his 3 disciples, and went into the room where the child was lying. He took her by the hand and said, "Talitha koum," which means, "Little girl, I tell you, get up." She got up at once and started walking around. When this happened, they were completely amazed, but Jesus gave them strict orders not to tell anyone, and he said, "Give her something to eat." Jesus left that place and went back to his hometown, followed by his disciples. On the Sabbath, he began to teach in the synagogue. Many people were there, and when they heard him, they were all amazed. "Where did he get this?" they asked. "What wisdom is this that has been given to him? How does he perform miracles? Isn't he a carpenter, the son of Mary and the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon? Aren't his sisters living there?" And so they rejected him. Jesus said to them, "Prophets are respected everywhere except in their own hometown and by their relatives and their family." He was not able to perform any miracles there, except that he placed his hands on a few sick people and healed them. He was greatly surprised because the people did not have faith. Then Jesus went to the villages around there, teaching the people. He called the 12 disciples together and sent them out 2 by 2. He gave them authority over the evil spirits and ordered them, "Don't take anything with you on the trip except a walking stick. No bread, no beggar's bag, no money in your pockets. Wear sandals, but don't carry an extra shirt." He also told them, "Wherever you are welcome, stay in the same house until you leave the place. If you come to a town where people do not welcome you or will not listen to you, leave it and shake the dust off your feet. That will be a warning to them." So they went out and preached that people should turn away from their sins. They drove out many demons, and rubbed olive oil on many sick people, and healed them. Now King Herod heard about all this, because Jesus' reputation spread everywhere. Some people were saying, "John the Baptist has come back to life. That is why he has this power to perform miracles." Others, however, said, "He is Elijah." Others said, "He is a prophet, like one of the prophets of long ago." When Herod heard this, he said, "He is John the Baptist. I had his head cut off, but he has come back to life." Herod himself had ordered John's arrest, and he had him tied up and put in prison. Herod did this because of Herodias, whom he married, even though she was the wife of his brother Philip. John the Baptist kept telling Herod, "It isn't right for you to marry your brother's wife." So Herodias held a grudge against John and wanted to kill him, but she could not because of Herod. Herod was afraid of John because he knew that John was a good and holy man, and so he kept him safe. He liked to listen to him, even though he became greatly disturbed every time he heard him. Finally, Herodias got her chance. It was on Herod's birthday, when he gave a feast for all the top government officials and military chiefs and the leading citizens of Galilee. The daughter of Herodias came in and danced, and pleased Herod and his guests. So the king said to the girl, What would you like to have? I will give you anything you want." With many vows, he said to her, "I swear I will give you anything you ask for, even as much as half my kingdom." So the girl went out and asked her mother, "What shall I ask for?" "The head of John the Baptist," she answered. The girl hurried back at once to the king and demanded, "I want you to give me here and now the head of John the Baptist on a plate." This made the king very sad, but he could not refuse her because of the vows he had made in front of all his guests. So he sent off a guard at once with orders to bring John's head. The guard left, went to the prison, and cut John's head off. Then he brought it on a plate and gave it to the girl, who gave it to her mother. When John's disciples heard about this, they came and got his body and buried it. The apostles returned and met with Jesus and told him all they had done and taught. There were so many people coming and going that Jesus and his disciples didn't even have time to eat. So he said to them, "Let us go off by ourselves to some place where we will be all alone, and you can rest a while." So they started out in a boat by themselves to a lonely place. Many people, however, saw them leave and knew at once who they were. So they went from all the towns and ran ahead by land and arrived at the place ahead of Jesus and his disciples. When Jesus got out of the boat, he saw this large crowd, and his heart was filled with pity for them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began to teach them many things. When it was getting late, his disciples came to him and said, "It is already very late, and this is a lonely place. Send the people away and let them go to their nearby farms and villages in order to buy themselves something to eat." "You yourselves give them something to eat," Jesus answered. They asked, "Do you want us to go and spend 200 silver coin on bread in order to feed them?" So Jesus asked them, "How much bread do you have? Go and see." And they found out. They told him 5 loaves and also 2 fish. Jesus then told the disciples to make all the people divide into groups and sit down on the green grass. So the people sat down in rows in groups of 100 and groups of 50. Then Jesus took the loaves and the 2 fish, looked up to heaven, gave thanks to God, and broke the loaves and gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them. Everyone ate and had enough. Then the disciples took up the 12 baskets full of what was left of the bread and of the fish. The number of men who were fed was 5,000. At once Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to Bethsaida, on the other side of the lake, while he sent the crowd away. After saying goodbye to the people, he went away to a hill to pray. When evening came, the boat was in the middle of the lake, while Jesus was alone on land. He saw that his disciples were straining at the oars, because they were rowing against the wind. So sometime between 3 and 6 o'clock in the morning, he came to them, walking on the water. He was going to pass them by, but they saw him walking on the water. "It's a ghost," they thought, and screamed. They were all terrified when they saw him. Jesus spoke to them at once. "Courage," he said. "It is I. Do not be afraid." Then he got into the boat with them, and the wind died down. The disciples were completely amazed, because they had not understood that that the real meaning of the feeding of the 5,000, and their minds could not grasp it. They crossed the lake and came to the land of Gennesaret, where they tied up the boat. As they left the boat, people recognized Jesus at once, so they ran through the whole region, and wherever they heard he was, they brought to him the sick lying on their mats. And everywhere Jesus went, to the villages, towns, or farms, people would take their sick to the marketplaces and beg him to let the sick at least touch the edge of his cloak, and all who touched it were made well. Some Pharisees and teachers of the law who had come from Jerusalem gathered around Jesus. They noticed that some of the disciples were eating their food with hands that were not ritually unclean. That is, they had not washed them in the way the Pharisees said people should. For the Pharisees, as well as the rest of the Jews, follow the teaching they received from their ancestors. They do not eat unless they wash their hands in the proper way, nor do they eat anything that comes from the market unless they wash it first. And they follow many other rules which they have received, such as the proper way to wash cups, pots, copper bowls, and beds. So the Pharisees and the teachers of the law asked Jesus, "Why is it that your disciples do not follow the teaching handed down by our ancestors, but instead eat with ritually unclean hands?" Jesus answered them, "How right Isaiah was when he prophesied about you. You are hypocrites, just as he wrote. These people, says God, honor me with their words, but their heart is really far away from me. It is no use for them to worship me, because they teach human rules, as though they were my laws. You put aside God's command and obey human teachings." And Jesus continued, "You have a clever way of rejecting God's law in order to uphold your own teaching. For Moses commanded, 'Respect your father and your mother,' and if you curse your father and your mother, you are to be put to death. But you teach that if people have something they could use to help their father or mother, but say, 'This is Korban,' which means it belongs to God, they are excused from helping their father or mother. It is in this way, the teaching you pass on to others cancels out the word of God. Then there are many other things like this that you do." Then Jesus called the crowd to them and once more and said to them, "Listen to me, all of you, and understand. There is nothing that goes into you from the outside which can make you ritually unclean. Rather, it is what comes out of you that makes you unclean." When he left the crowd and went into his house, his disciples asked him to explain this, saying, "You are no more intelligent than the others." Jesus said to them, "Don't you understand? Nothing that goes into you from the outside can really make you unclean, because it does not go into your heart, but into your stomach, and then goes out of the body." In saying this, Jesus declared that all foods are fit to be eaten. And then he went on to say, "It is what comes out of you that makes you unclean. For from the inside, from your heart, come the evil ideas which lead you to do immoral things, to rob, to kill, to commit adultery, to be greedy, and to do all sorts of evil things, deceit, indecency, jealousy, slander, pride, and folly. All these things come from the inside you and make you unclean." Then Jesus left and went away to the territory near the city of Tyre. He went into a house and did not want anyone to know he was there, but he could not stay hidden. A woman whose daughter had an evil spirit in her heard about Jesus and came to him at once and fell to his feet. The woman was a Gentile, born in the region of Phoenicia in Syria. She begged Jesus to drive the demon out of her daughter, but Jesus answered, "Let us first feed the children. It isn't right to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." "Sir," she answered, "even the dogs are under the table. Even the dogs under the table eat the children's leftovers." So Jesus said to her, "Because of that answer, go back home, where you will find that the demon has gone out of your daughter." She went home and found her child laying on the bed, and the demon indeed gone out of her. Jesus left the neighborhood of Tyre and went on through Sidon and Lake Galilee, going by way of the territory of the 10 towns. Some people brought him a man who was deaf and could hardly speak, and they begged Jesus to place his hands on him. So Jesus took him off alone, away from the crowd, put his fingers in the man's ears, spat, and touched the man's tongue. Then Jesus looked up to heaven, gave a deep groan, and said to the man, Ephphatha, which means open up. Once the man was able to hear, his speech impediment was removed, and he began to talk without any trouble. Then Jesus ordered the people not to speak of it to anyone, but the more he ordered them not to, the more they told it. And all who heard were completely amazed. How well he does everything, they exclaimed. He even causes the deaf to hear and the dumb to speak. Not long afterward, another large crowd came together. When the people had nothing left to eat, Jesus called the disciples to him and said, I feel sorry for these people, because they had been with me for 3 days and now have nothing to eat. If I send them home without feeding them, they will faint as they go, because some of them have come a long way. His disciples asked him, Where in this desert can you find enough food to feed all these people? How much bread do you have? Jesus asked. 7 loaves, they answered. He ordered the crowd to sit down on the ground. He took the 7 loaves, gave thanks to God, broke them, and gave them to his disciples to distribute to the crowd. The disciples did so, and they also had a few small fish. Jesus gave thanks for these and told the disciples to distribute them too. Everybody ate and had enough, and there were about 4,000 people. Then the disciples took up 7 baskets full of pieces left over. Jesus sent the people away, and at once got into a boat with his disciples and went to the district of Dalmanutha. Some Pharisees came to Jesus and started to argue with him. They wanted to trap him, so they asked him to perform a miracle to show that God approved of him. But Jesus gave a deep groan and said, Why do the people of this day ask for a miracle? No, I tell you, no such proof will be given to these people. He left them, got back into the boat, and started across to the other side of the lake. The disciples had forgotten to bring enough bread and had only 1 loaf with them in the boat. Take care, Jesus warned them, and be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees and the yeast of Herod. They started discussing amongst themselves. He said this because we don't have any bread. Jesus knew what they were saying, and he asked them, Why are you discussing about not having any bread? Don't you know or understand yet? Are your minds so dull? You have eyes, can't you see? You have ears, can't you hear? Don't you remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000 people? How many baskets full of leftovers did you take up? 12, they answered. And when I broke the 7 loaves up for the 4,000 people, Jesus asked, How many baskets full of leftover pieces did you take up? 7, they answered. And you still don't understand? He asked them. They came to Bethsaida, where some people brought a blind man to Jesus and begged him to touch him. Jesus took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the village. After spitting in the man's eyes, Jesus placed his hands on him and asked him, Can you see anything? The man looked up and said, Yes, I can see people, but they look like trees walking around. Jesus again placed his hands on the man's eyes. This time the man looked intently. His eyesight returned, and he saw everything clearly. Jesus then sent him home with the order, Don't go back into the village. Then Jesus and his disciples went away to the villages near Caesarea Philippi. On the way he asked them, Tell me, who do people say I am? Some say that you are John the Baptist, they answered. Others say that you are Elijah, while others say that you are one of the prophets. What about you? He asked them. Who do you say that I am? Peter answered, You are the Messiah. Then Jesus ordered them, Do not tell anyone about me. Then Jesus began to teach his disciples, The Son of Man must suffer much and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests and the teachers of the law. He will be put to death, but 3 days later he will rise to life. He made this very clear to them. So Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But Jesus turned around, looked at his disciples, and rebuked Peter. Get away from me, Satan, he said. Your thoughts don't come from God, but from human nature. Then Jesus called the crowd and his disciples to him. If any of you want to come with me, he told them, you must forget yourself, carry your cross, and follow me. For if you want to save your own life, you will lose it. But if you lose your life for me and for the gospel, you will save it. Do you gain anything if you win the whole world, but lose your life? Of course not. There's nothing that you can give to regain your life. If you are ashamed of me and of my teaching, in this godless and wicked day, then the Son of Man will be ashamed of you when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. That is the end of Mark chapter 8. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I pray for everybody who has joined me. I hope you all have wonderful days, and that you can join me again tomorrow when we start with Mark chapter 9. Just as a reminder for everybody, we are looking to get to 50 subscribers so that I can live stream reading the Bible in the morning. I would also appreciate you supporting the channel by liking and subscribing, but also by checking out the link in the description for Whole Strength. Whole Strength is a company that does Christian-based workout gear, and I am affiliated with them. I'm a sponsored athlete. So if you go and use the link down below and make a purchase, then you will be supporting the channel, supporting me, and I would greatly appreciate that. This isn't an ad. I just think it'd be a great way to help support me and a Christian-based business. So thank you so much, and I'll see you tomorrow.